Hi, everybody, and welcome to Retro Handhelds BRB Gaming Podcast. It is another live edition today, and we have a special Ask Me Anything with our friend Russ from Retro Game Core. Hi, Russ.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
I'm your host, Stubborn Pixel, and I'm joined, as always, by my feisty co-host, Thor. Hello, sir.
Hey, yo. How's everybody doing tonight?
Well, Thor, what do you have for us?
Well, tonight we've got a real treat. All right, we've got Russ here from Retro Game Core, and for those of you who don't know, Russ is a super fun and cool guy. He's also a New York Times best-selling author as well, and his latest passion for the past year or so, right, has been his YouTube channel, Retro Game Core. And so tonight we've got the AMA going on, and I'm really excited to be here. What you been up to, Russ? How you been doing?
I'm good, man. So I just, honestly, I've been super busy with work for the past few weeks, but I've still been knocking out like 1 or 2 videos a week. So hopefully people haven't noticed how much has dropped off. But luckily that new job that I've been working ends in like a week. So I will get back to it. I'm actually going to take 10 days off immediately after and just make a ton of ton of videos. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I definitely have your, like we were talking about, your RGB 10 Max button swap video on my list to watch here coming up. So that was one of those things where I saw that they started. So let's get our AMA kicked off. We've got a few questions from Reddit, and we've got a few questions as well from our podcast chat here. Stubbs, you want to take that away?
Yeah, let's get started here. All right, so moving right to the start, we have a question from Eames, and he'd like to know, Russ, if you have 15 minutes to pack for a 12-hour flight, what one console are you bringing? Now, all previous SD cards you have suddenly vanished, and all previous setup of ROMs and extra operating systems are not set up yet.
So I got 15 minutes to actually get it working?
Yep, just 15 minutes.
My videos are like 25 minutes long, though. I probably would do the RG351P. Just because, man, I really know that system. You know what I mean? Like, I could actually be blindfolded and set that thing up. You know what I mean? And so that's probably what I would pick. Just, and it's got a good 6-hour battery life, so that'll be good too, But yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with that. I partially want to say PS Vita too, but, setting that up and getting everything installed onto it takes a lot longer than 15 minutes, so that's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah, those game install sizes are a little big too for 15 minutes. So you're going to get maybe one game, right?
Right. And then I'm going to put one game on it, and then all I can think about is the other game I wish I had put on it. That's how I work.
That's a really good call, though, that flashing the operating system on the SD cards real quick, especially if you're using Etcher and stuff and know exactly what you're doing, like you were saying. Yeah,
exactly. I'd just flash it, plug it right back into the computer after I've gone through the process, and then I'm just going to throw on a bunch of Super Nintendo games and finally maybe beat Mario World for the first time, which I still have never done. But
what?
Yeah. I never had a Super Nintendo, so I never got to play any of those games.
Oh, man. We all have those blind spots, though.
It's I forgive you personally. I don't know if Eames does, but we'll have to.
I know.
Yeah, he's a harder sell.
Yeah, that's why I always show that one single level on Mario World when I show Super Nintendo, because I know that one. I have it memorized so well. It's the one you go to the left when you start the game. But that's the only level I know in the whole game. Isn't that amazing?
I mean, it's a good level.
Yeah.
I love that. This is a good story.
Yeah.
Well, moving along. So one from Super Jimmy Russell's. Russ, what's your recommendation at around the $100 price point, and also one around the $50 price point?
Let's do $50 first. So It's going to be the V90, no questions asked. I
Really?
think that Pal Kitty easy. That's just easily it. I would almost say the RG300, but man, that V90 is just so nice. I love it. And I actually am planning on doing a new video on it, because I did a review and I was like, hey everybody, you should really pay attention to this thing. But I want to do an actual full-on setup video. And I love that little thing, man. It's definitely worth $50.
Did that actually have dual front facing speakers?
Yeah, so it has dual stereo speakers in the front. I love the clamshell design of it. It doesn't have an analog stick, but I can live without that. And PS1 is a bit of a pain to actually get set up, but everything else runs fairly well. Like, it's pretty impressive. And on top of that, the operating system itself is fairly intuitive. It reminds me a lot of Emulation Station. And so in that sense, yeah, it's a winner. I love it.
Well, how'd you feel about it with that compared to the BitBoy Pocket Go?
So the Pocket Go was the first device I ever had. I got it like a year and a half ago. I don't even count it as part of like my devices because I shipped that to my brother because I hated it.
That's fair.
Clean on it, and yeah, I just hated. Like, there was a lot of. I didn't update the firmware initially because I didn't know anything about this stuff, and so there was a ton of screen tearing, and I was like, "This is not good," 90 it's a lot better in terms of just the screen quality and things like that. I like it a lot better.
Well, cool. And so what do you feel about the $100 mark? How about that?
Man, I know. I was thinking about that as I was talking. So I used to say the 351p all the time, but I got to be honest. I think that if you can get the RGB 10 Pro, that's the one with the OCA laminated display, I would get that one instead because it's relatively smaller than the RG351P. And I've just found over the past like 6 months or 8 months that I've had the RG351P, I never use that second analog stick. I just don't use it. And so the biggest like selling point against the RGB 10 is the fact that it doesn't have a second analog stick. But man, over time I've just realized I don't really need it. And so I think that price point it's about $75 for the yellow one, and then the Pro version with the OCA laminated display, you can get that for around $90 or so. I think that's the winner there. That gives you a little bit extra money to go and buy a new SD card.
Stubbs and I had a little bit of a similar experience where we were talking in DMs about the 351P versus the 351V, and yeah, that was my major complaint was there's no second analog stick. Right. I never used the second analog stick.
Me either.
You're 100% right on that.
Unless you're playing Ape Escape, but like,
right.
I just want it there for some reason. I don't know why.
Man, I don't like that game. That's not my game.
Just calling shots. Just it's not a great game, but people always bring it up. Like, but what if I want to play Ape Escape one day?
Right. Okay, sure. Yeah,
I
don't know. I think for me, it's like the Quake 3 port is probably the one where I'm like, okay, this is really good. That's about it.
Well, the next question we have is from Lonk. Russ, have you messed around with emulation and system modding on any non-handheld devices? If so, which ones and what were your experiences? And if not, what is it about handhelds specifically that you find compelling?
Yeah, so I don't have some sort of like flowery thing for this one. And I should mention too, I have not read any of these questions ahead of time. So I'm getting them all fresh, and I purposely didn't look at them. So great question. I have dived into other like TV plugin, like Android TV set boxes, things like that. Things that you can load Emulec on. The Super Console X is a good example. And then there's one called the MUB, which stands for Makeup Box, which is like the HK1. And so all these are relatively very similar to these handheld devices. They just plug into the TV. I do have an NVIDIA Shield as well. I plan on doing a video on that here in the next month or so. I've been testing that for a while. To be honest, I just don't get enough time at the TV to actually do that. My kids are always watching Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. Like, we don't have the TVs for that stuff. And so for me, I can just grab a handheld device and I can jump into the car, like if we're going to go and, I don't know, go get shave ice. I live in Hawaii, so we get shave ice all the time. Or whatever, like I can grab it and put it in the car with me. I can do it in bed. I can jump on the couch while the kids are watching TV and play. And to me, that's way more compelling. And so I think that's why I'm drawn to handheld devices. And the other part of it is that I never owned a Game Boy when I was a kid. So that little so those little like butterflies in the stomach,
I'm tearing up a little bit right now thinking about that. Okay, sorry.
Like warm fuzzy when I have a handheld device. Because my first one was the PSP. Like 2005. I was 25 years old when I had my first.
Dang.
This is this is a criminal offense. This is not okay. I want to build a time machine so we can go back and give little Russ a Game Boy.
That's right. No, honestly, that's like a big motivating factor to me. Is like I love capturing that childhood, like just joy of playing these handheld devices.
Yeah.
Now you're making me tear up.
I know. I'm like, dude, you should have had a Game Boy. Please. Everybody had a Game Boy. Metroid Return to Samus. Come on. All right.
And there's something else. There's something about having a dedicated handheld device too. A lot of people are like, "Oh, why don't you just play on your phone?" I like personally having the handheld. I like having something separate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dedicated.
It's such a big deal. And I got a video about iPhone gaming actually coming out tomorrow.
Cool.
And it's close, like if you do all the right things, you can get it pretty close, but it's not there, like the handheld device, a dedicated device like that. It's just something special about it. I love it.
Yeah.
Agreed. Next question we have is from Chris51332. Chris asks, what do you think about the RG552, the KT-R1, and the Retroid Pocket 2? Which is your favorite of those?
I think that they're referencing the RP3, not the RP2.
Yeah, because they're all upcoming. Yeah.
Yeah, they're asking hype.
Which one? Which is your favorite by the rumors? By the rumors.
Well, the D-pad on that KTR, whatever that thing is just atrocious. So hopefully they fix that. But that one looks good. Like it's like on paper, I talked about this with the Suppor Q400, and I called it a paper tiger. Like on paper, it looks like it hits all the wickets, right? But in real life, it just kind of floats away in the wind. Mm-hmm. And so I'm worried about that KT one, that it does look good, but those are all mock-ups. Let's see it in the hand. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
When it comes to the RG device, the 552 or whatever, Ambernick obviously has a pretty good track record at this point, but man, they have a really good propensity to also just keep it from being the best device possible. Whatever it happens to be, right? The wrong aspect ratio on the screen, or leaving out Wi-Fi, or whatever it happens to be. They always just seem to step over their own feet, and so something's going to happen with this 552. They're gonna screw it up somehow. And then
I'm still confused over them pulling back on the resolution for the 351 devices.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that was just an easy sell because the Odrego Super already had that, and so they were able to access those displays. That's the only way I can figure it out. But yeah, and then so the Retroid Pocket 3, so I've seen those mock-ups as well. Man, I love those shoulder buttons and the triggers, right? I love how they're stacked like that. Yeah. And it looks like, when I see the front of it, it's a lot like that Valhalla one as well, right? I see the front of it, and I'm like, that's it. Like, it's got everything I like. I like, offset analog sticks. I like the look of the D-pad and the face buttons. It looks good, but I just want to get my hands on it because I know there's going to be something to it, after I get it in my hands.
I personally am looking forward to the RP3 because I like the size and that form factor, because I do have a relationship with Retroid, and the RP2 was a pretty solid product. There were definitely some bugs, but I think that as far as tangibility is concerned, that the RP3 is the highest on that list.
And they've confirmed touchscreen with that, right?
No, they haven't really confirmed anything yet.
Oh, okay.
I think user Norbright found he dug around and found those blueprints somewhere.
Yeah, like the patents, right? I think I had seen something that it was that at least on those documents it said touchscreen, and so that gives me some hope.
Here's hoping. Next, same question, or rather, same person, Chris51332. A second question from him: will you do a video about 3DS homebrew and emulation, just like you did with the PlayStation Vita?
Yeah, man. So I have a 3DS. It's not 3DS. It's like the 2DS XL or whatever. It looks like a 3DS, but doesn't have 3D. Yeah. I don't know my Nintendo naming conventions very well. But anyway, I've had that for years. Like, I actually, I got that way before the retro handheld stuff. Like, it was mostly for my oldest son. He didn't like it, and I was like, well, screw it, it's mine. And so I put an R4 card in it, and but I haven't actually like jailbroken it or none of that stuff yet. I want to do it, but to be honest, I've watched videos of or I've watched channels, I should say, where people are getting like knocked down by Nintendo, and I don't want that to happen. You know, I don't want to be taken offline for showing how to hack one of their devices. I don't mind doing it like when it's something that is no longer in production. And I guess the 2DS is no longer in production, but still, it makes me a little nervous. That's why I don't do any Switch videos, but I do think that at some point I'll probably do a 3DS video. I got a couple.
Nintendo is extremely litigious. Oh my gosh.
So I have like a PlayStation Classic that I've always wanted to hack. It's still in the box, right? And so I'll probably do that at this point as well. I think that's probably the best place for it, is in the box at this point, but I do want to see what I can get out of it as well. So I do have a couple things lined up that it's just kind of, when the time's right, I'll do it.
I will say something about soft modding a 3DS or 2DS XL, and that is the file type CIA. The installation time on the 3DS is excruciating. You get like a 3 gigabyte file, and it takes you 40 or 50 minutes to install it.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
that
it's
sounds
crazy.
Like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's not at all.
Yeah, that's one thing that you never really see in my videos, right? I pop in like a 25-minute video, but what you don't see is the 8 hours of footage that I recorded to make those 25 minutes. All the loading screens, like me hitting start like 500 times to get as fast as I can through whatever. And so the idea of having to install something for 45 minutes for one game, no thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could have like sat in the drive-through line of Burger King like 20 times over by then.
Right. Yep.
Next question, Sandusky. This is a little longer one. As manufacturers continue to improve the hardware on new handhelds relative to the prices we pay now, Russ, what do you think will be the selling point for new devices once we reach a point where we can comfortably play up to 6th and 7th gen consoles for a cheap price? And will there be any incentive for these companies to keep making handhelds at that point? If they do, how will they be able to market them once power and speed aren't a factor?
Well, Sandusky, I think you are a very optimistic person. So I think they are going to trickle the features out over the next like 5-6 years. I think that question essentially is kind of moot because I think they're just going to keep rolling out the cheap stuff as much as they can because that's the extra parts they have over there in Shenzhen. And so my expectation is it'll be a long time before we get to Generation 6. Comfortably with a lot like as a standard norm, right? I mean, here we are still getting excited about a PS1 game like Bloody Roar 2 that plays without lag,
Right.
So I think we're ways off from that. There's always going to be the premium ones. You can pay $600 or whatever it happens to be for the Aya Neo or that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the $200 and less space, it's going to be a while, I think, before we can comfortably play these games. I think everyone's excited about the Valhalla, the $199 and all that. But we'll see. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's going to be able to play as many GameCube games and PS2 games as we're hoping it will. I think what'll come is the conversation will change, and all of a sudden people will be talking about what it can't play instead of what it can play, right? Which is exactly what happened with all the other devices. And so, yeah, I think we're a ways off, honestly.
I've seen as sort of like something sort of perpendicular to this. I've seen a lot of pushback from a lot of manufacturers still to put a 5 gigahertz chip in their device,
right?
Which would be for streaming, right? Is what I'm referencing.
Yeah, exactly.
And they just really don't want to do it, do they?
Yeah, it's a great point.
We have one from Jurassic Pixels, and they want to know: so will the GKD Mini be reviewed ever? And is there any custom firmware available for it? What would be the best handheld for fighting games? Currently, they love the feel of the 8BitDo SN30 with Android phone for fighters, and they're wondering if something like the Pocket Go S30 would be similar to that feel.
Man,
cheers! It's a multi-parter.
Good questions, yeah. Okay, let's start with GKD Mini. So I did get mine about 3 days ago in the mail. It took forever, but I finally got it, and it's like a light green color. It looks like toothpaste, basically. But I like it. I'll give you a spoiler. Like just in holding it, it rattles a lot, and I don't like it when devices rattle. It's like my number one complaint about the RGB 20.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. To be honest, I haven't played anything on it because the whole dang thing is in Chinese. So I actually like the whole entire firmware is in Chinese, and honestly, one of my suppliers who gives me review handhelds, he was like, I'm going to hold off until we have an English version. And finally, I just couldn't wait anymore. I just bought it myself, and I knew I was going to get the Chinese version. So there is a custom firmware for it. I think it's called IUX. So I will be doing an installation of that, putting that on the video, because I do think there's an English translation of that one already. It seems pretty good. It's more comfortable to me than the 280V, the Ambernic RG 280V. So it's just a little bit bigger, and I like that. So that was the first question. Second question was, can you remind me? Sorry.
The second part of that was going to be, they're wondering if something like the Pocket S30 would have a similar feel to 8BitDo's SN30
that's right,
controller for fighting games.
Yeah. Okay, so this S30 is not like that. So if you watch my video, you'll see that I say that the D-pad is it's hard and kind of abrasive. It's not a good feeling for fighting games in particular. I remember specifically noting that in my review, is that it's not good for fighting games. When it comes to actual fighting games, to be honest, I like a very mushy D-pad. I like that kind of ability to just really hammer down on it while I'm playing. So for me, I like the Powkiddy devices when it comes to that D-pad. So the RGB 10 or the RGB 10 Max would probably be my choice if I was going to play a fighting game. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would go with when it comes to that. I know a lot of people have their own opinions about that stuff. You know, some people would, like the Pieboy DMG would be great because it has all 6 buttons there on the front.
Yeah, not bad.
But again, I'm not a fan of that D-pad for fighting games either. But I didn't give it a chance to break in. Honestly, I used it for about a month, and then I ended up selling it because I just didn't think it was going to have a good. It just wasn't going to do anything other than sit on my shelf, and so I thought it'd be better to let someone else enjoy it.
How do you feel about the 351 series D-pads? Because I'm pretty happy with them personally.
Yeah, I like them. I don't ever think about them in terms of fighting. I think about them in terms of platforming and stuff because they're precise. You know, I like that they're so precise. And for me, maybe it's the way I play fighting games. But man, I just hammer on the D-pad, just hoping I can get either a fireball or a dragon punch out of it. Like I don't really care. You know, like I'm not good at that shit. So yeah. I don't think of the RG351 devices or any of the Ambernic devices as being fighting game machines. To me, I like to use the Powkiddy, but that might be my style.
Well, here's the other question: do you use the tip of your thumb or like the ball of that first knuckle with the D-pad?
Question. Hold on, I'm gonna grab one. I use the tip. Yeah.
Use the tip. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So that might be part of it.
Well, now we have a question from our very own Flatfoot Fox. Question: when testing a new device, do you have any go-to games that you find yourself constantly returning to, or are you generally just working through a backlog of new titles with each handheld?
Working through a backlog of new titles. Come on, I don't ever play any video games. I just work on guides and stuff, man. I play Phoenix Wright. Like I play that every night, you know, and I'm just I finished like the 3rd or the 4th case the other night, the Samurai case, and so I'm moving on now. But yeah, I don't get to really play any games. I play a few levels and stuff as I'm testing. So when it comes to my testing, I actually have like my own, like on my hard drive, I have a duplicate folder, like hierarchy of like my retro, I call it retro highlights. And you'll see that in some of my videos when I do screen captures. And I've basically thrown in like 20 to 30 of my favorite games on each of those systems. And then I just drag it all over to a new SD card. And so those are my go-to titles. You know, they're the ones you're going to see on the videos and stuff. I'm always going to test Mario 3 when I do NES because I do what I call the tail test, which is basically like to determine lag. I get my raccoon tail, you know, and then I kill the first 3 Goombas in the level of level 1. That's like my test of how quickly and how accurately I can kill those Goombas is how good the input lag is. You know, things like that. And so I know it's probably, as a viewer, a little bit boring to see me play Sonic Adventure 2 all the time. I'm not a fan of that game, you know, but I do it all the time. But that's because I know how it's supposed to feel. I know how the music's supposed to sound. And those things are really important so that I can give you a good idea of how the experience is going to be. And so I'm falling on my own sword when I play those games because I don't enjoy it myself, but I feel like it's the best thing I can do for everyone.
Yeah,
it's sort of like how with N64, every time we're loading up custom firmware and stuff like that, things that we're testing, I always go straight to Star Fox just because I know it runs well, and then I go to GoldenEye because I know it runs like crap on most systems.
That's funny. See, I don't do either of those games, right? For GoldenEye, it's like the controls are so off for me. First off, I play with inverted controls on modern FPSs. I'm left-handed, and it's just always been the way I've played. And so because of that, like GoldenEye just makes my brain hurt. So I never test GoldenEye because I know I'm gonna have to spend 20 minutes getting the configuration figured out or whatever, and I just never get to it. And so instead, I always do F-Zero instead.
Well, moving on to some questions from our Reddit friends. We have u/KitKeet, and they want to know, seeing that each of the mainstream handhelds today has some sort of pros and cons for each of them, if you were to design a retro handheld today, what would be the design choices that you'd put in? The features, the layout, which in your mind defines the perfect handheld, while keeping the cost relatively accessible to most buyers.
Good question. So let's talk about the feel first. I think that's probably the most important part. I like a lot of what Ambernick does. I mean, I'm obviously a huge fan of what they do. I actually prefer offset D-pads, or I'm sorry, offset analog sticks. So I like to have my D-pad below my analog stick on the left. That just comes from a long time of playing Xbox, Xbox 360 and stuff. It just feels more comfortable to me. So I kind of like that perspective. Also, it feels more balanced when I'm playing a twin stick game on a handheld device. When I have both analog sticks on the bottom like that, to me it feels like I'm going to flip the device in my hands. Like I just don't have the right leverage or something.
Yeah.
And so I like having that offset. I also think that a lot of these handheld devices kind of went the way of the Vita in the fact that the buttons are just too dang small. I don't know why people make such small face buttons. I wish they were a little bit bigger and chunkier. And some handhelds do a pretty good job of that. I think that the Ambernick is almost big enough, but I would like it just to be a tiny bit bigger. Something like the Super Nintendo sized buttons or even the PS1 controller sized buttons, to me would be just a lot better. And I think it's about 10 millimeters. And a lot of them now are between 6 and 8. So I'd like to have 10 millimeter buttons. Stacked shoulder buttons are really important to me. I love that on the Retroid Pocket 2. I'm not sure. Front facing speakers, like that's always a big deal to me. Why are you going to have them face away or down? Like, it doesn't make any sense, And, 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, big deal. And retro achievements, always great too.
Yeah. You called it retro achievements. That's
so
amazing.
here's the big one: Android or Linux on your perfect handheld.
Man, you're gonna make half of this audience mad. So, man, I don't know. Like I'm back and forth all the time. If there's touchscreen, I don't mind Android, and you'll see in a lot of my Android videos, I don't go into the whole dig thing and like really make a front end and stuff. Because to me, it's neither here nor there if I tap something with my finger and move on, right? If you don't have touchscreen, then I can totally understand why you need a good front end. And that's where Linux really kind of does really well. Like I love Emulation Station, I love that feel. But at the same time, there's a lot of work involved in that Linux side, and I love the optimizations that are there in Android. Just Nintendo 64, on Android, it just works, and I love that. And so I hate having 6 or 7 different emulator options in Arc OS. Like it's just a pain in the butt to tell people, just find the best emulator, or just figure it out. And it's like, man, I have never done a Nintendo 64 dedicated video because it's just too complicated when it comes to a Linux operating system. And so. I don't know. Maybe Android.
I won't argue with that. And while you're at it, maybe Thor's integration of Lineage. Our next question is from...
we can maybe get something going there.
So our next question is from you/French Cookie. They want to know, what's your fondest memory related to retro gaming and gaming in general?
Wow. This is one of those times where I wish I had read ahead.
It's a heavy-hitting AMA, sir.
Like a job interview.
Yeah. So I'll get a little personal here for a second. So weird fact about me is that I actually had a stroke when I was 25 years old. Like I lost all function on my left side. Like it was out of nowhere, just a freak thing that happened to me. And so I had to learn how to walk and like even talk again and how to write. Like I'm left-handed. And so I had about a month or 2 months off from work to kind of recover from that. And the coolest thing about if there's any cool thing about having a stroke, the coolest thing about having a stroke when you're 25 is that your brain actually bounces back very quickly. But this was around 2005, so I had first got my GameCube around then as well. And I got Paper Mario, the one with the treasure chest, I forgot what it's called, the one on the GameCube, right? A lot of people say that's the best Paper Mario game. And I sat down and I played that game during that month, and it was awesome. Like I was doing other things, I was like learning. I had to like write my name 100 times a day to like relearn how to write and stuff.
Yeah. So
there's all these other things going on, but man, I could just lay back. We had like this recliner, and I had this crappy 20-inch CRT TV, and I loved it, man. I got so immersed in that stuff, and it was just like this great break to just kind of get away from everything. And so when it comes to gaming, that still like has a special place in my heart. I'd never gone back and played that game again. Thousand Year Door, that's the one it's called. And I've never gone back and played it again. But I'm just waiting for a retro handheld that can play that game again, because I'm going to do it and I'm going to love it.
Yeah.
Well, if the Valhalla ever comes to fruition, that might be the one.
Yeah. I heard the Indiegogo page is coming out today. Kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. I was about to be like, I need to shut down
Jeez,
the CMA.
dude.
I have
What?
things to do now.
What do you know? I don't.
That's good times. Also, really sorry that you had that experience, man.
It's all
that's
good.
tough.
It's all good. It makes us better people in the end. So
Yeah, better, stronger people. Next question actually is from Anonymous. They want to know, what do you think is your favorite port? What is your favorite port to handheld devices? For example, Free Heroes, Quake 3, Devolution X.
Good question. I would say I'm torn. You know, I initially used to say the Mario 64 port. I mean, I've done like 3 videos on that thing at this point. And then Shovel Knight, you know, I never played that game before. And I put that on the RG series and all the RK3326 devices. That was a lot of fun too. You know, I love the precise controls on that. But to be honest, it's the Sonic ports. Like those like
Really?
phone ports that have been put over onto like the emulation station emulate stuff. They're so good because they're widescreen, and so you can see more of the level as you're playing, and so you just get like this little bit more of an advantage while you're playing, and so you can just run faster without having to worry too much about running into some spikes, you know. And so every time I boot that up, I boot up level 1 on Sonic 2, which is like one of my favorite games of all time, and it's just pure joy when I'm playing through that. It's so fun.
It's
Did you
always fun,
see
though.
that Super Mario World got a legit widescreen hack?
Oh yeah, I've gotten a lot of tweets and questions about that and stuff.
Oh, have you?
It's just not, you know, they have to use the BSNES like beta core and RetroArch. There's no handheld within this space that can handle that core. You know, it's not even loaded on a lot of these RetroArchs, and so unfortunately, you know, we're not going to be able to play that on a handheld device anytime soon. But yeah, I might do a video about how to stream that from your computer over to your device, but that's a lot of work, you know.
It is. That's a lot
it
of
does look
setup.
really cool, but
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah. Because then you got to hack the ROM too. Like, there's a lot involved in that. So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. Question from Inigo Mars on Reddit. They've gone through a number of retro handhelds, and now they're considering getting a Retroid Pocket 2. With the RP3 over the horizon, should they hold off on the RP3? Do you think they should purchase the RP2?
You're asking the wrong dude.
I know, but I'm just reading the questions, man.
Oh, I have like my layout of retro handhelds in front of me. Like I keep like these like file folders that are like these document holders, and I think I have 10 out here, right? And these are like my top 10.
Yeah.
And my Retroid Pocket 2 is not in this mix. Like I just saw it and I was like, holy crap! I don't even know where it is. The Game Force actually replaced it. I'm looking at it right now.
It's in the garbage disposal in the kitchen, but I don't know.
It's literally in a shoebox right now. So yeah,
Oh, no.
the Retroid Pocket 2 is cool. You know, it is really neat. But, you know, I harped on the touchscreen thing with the Retroid Pocket 3 because that is a really important factor for me. Navigating through it, even with the amazing work that the teams have done between putting Android 8.1 on there and then getting Lineage on there, you know, it is really compelling and very cool. But that touchscreen thing, like, I can't explain how many times I'm playing the Retroid Pocket 2 and I have to reach over and grab my OTG adapter and my wireless like adapter for my keyboard because I need a mouse and a keyboard to get to the next spot, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that just breaks that whole cycle of having a retro handheld device. At that point, I'm like, shit, I should just be doing this on my computer at this point, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yep,
yeah.
I feel you there. And I'm gonna side tangent real quick because the handheld I've been playing the most in the last week, this is going to be weird, but it's the Game & Watch, the re-released Game & Watch, because it turns on and it does 3 functions. It does Mario 1, Mario, the Lost Levels, and Ball Game, where Mario balances a ball between his hands. And like for some reason to me in work meetings, it's just like the easiest thing just to pick up and play, and it saves your spot when you put it to sleep. So, and it's a clock. When you're not using it. So I'm just like enthralled right now with the simplicity of this thing. Okay.
yeah, that's kind of amazing. Yeah, no, You're right though. I mean, it's I love the clock function. Like when I see that, I'm like, man, I should get that. I'm not going to pay $60 for a clock, but it is compelling.
Which leads me into my question for you. Have you seen the Playdate? Have you seen this handheld? Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I have not seen that.
We've got to indoctrinate him.
We got to. It's a memory LCD screen, which is really low power handheld that has a hand crank on it. That
Oh, yeah.
You've seen
Like
that?
It's yellow or whatever? Yeah.
It's yellow.
Is that coming out finally?
It's coming out.
Yeah, pre-orders are up in July, I think.
Yep, pre-orders come up in a couple of days here, July 1st. Delivery, I'm not sure yet, but the company's here in Portland, Oregon, and all the titles for it are built only for this device. So they have some indie companies building custom games from some big names even for this device only. So you have to spend the $180 to have this little thing with the hand crank to play these unique twee indie games. So I'm like totally sold on it. The simplicity and like the stress relief thought of that, and for the $180 they give you a season of games and content that they release to you, I think like one a week or something, and it just magically shows up.
Now, actually,
2 a week shows up on the device, and then I don't know what happens when the next season comes out. Not to shill or anything, but I'm totally in love with the idea of this thing as a separate entity
of
from
old
this.
games.
Yeah, just as a different idea, it's refreshing to me.
You're selling me on it. I'll definitely be checking that out. So, we'll see.
Real quick, before we move on to the next question, I did want to just throw in my opinion on something real quick and see, Russ, how you feel about it regarding the should I wait on a handheld? Should I wait to buy a handheld? This market is actually, in my opinion, pretty unstable, right? And so what I get a lot of DMs about that question in particular, and what I usually tell people is buy what's currently available. Buy what you can get your hands on right now if you're that interested, and learn something, and then get something when it comes out. Don't wait. Don't hope something comes out.
Right.
Yeah. So I kind of have two schools of thought when it comes to that. The first is that, the same kind of thing, right? Look at what's currently available, look at what it can do, and then make the determination if that's worth the price. And if that's worth the price, then grab it, right? Because yes, there will always be another console coming out soon, but you could be playing games while you're waiting for the next one, right?
Yeah.
And so get the one that you think's worth your money now, and then, see what happens later. There's always people who are going to want to buy that off you. There's marketplaces in all the Discord servers. You can pop it up on Reddit sometimes. They'll let you sell it. There's easy ways to get rid of these devices for a pretty good penny, and then put that towards your next one once you've played through it. So there's a lot of options. Yeah, they
do hold their value pretty dang well. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yep.
Something that came out 6 or 8 months ago, you only lose maybe $10 on it.
So I have the Trim UI, which is now called the Pow Kitty something or other or whatever, the really small credit card size one. And I didn't like that. If anyone watched my video, that was like my first negative video where I'm like, this thing's junk. And at the time, with the firmware and stuff, and I didn't give it a full, I didn't give it a college try. I knew there was an update to the firmware available on the website that was going to fix screen tearing. But at the same time, I was just so turned off by the experience that I was like, this thing isn't even worth that. And so, but now that they've rebranded it, no one likes to have the words Pow Kitty on any of their devices.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing people now saying, man, I wish I got the Trim UI. And I got one still, and so what I plan on doing is doing an update video and actually giving it the college try this time around. But man, I keep thinking to myself, what if I sell this and I actually make money off it? That'd be really weird.
Next question is going to be from Anonymous again. So, what handhelds have later gone on to surpass or fall beneath your initial expectations, Russ?
Okay, well, let's start with RGB10. So I bought that is basically a counterpoint to the RG351P. Like my plan was I was going to buy this thing. It's like a cheaper version of the RGB or the RG351P. And I was like, here's what you'll get if you buy one of these crappier handhelds, right? This is why you should buy the 351P. That was going to be my argument.
Yeah.
And I got it and I freaking loved it. And I was like, what am I going to do now? And so I ended up making a video that was like a love letter to the RGB10 and hey, I thought this was going to be an argument against the 351P, and it turned out to be an argument for the RGB10. So that one totally exceeded my expectations. When it comes to something that kind of let me down,
you can say RP2. That's okay.
Yeah,
you can say.
We're okay.
I was about to say that. Yeah. So the Retro Pocket 2. There was a lot of hype on the internet, around this time last year, right? And so I bought my first device arrived on the July 4th weekend. And so we're looking at just about a year when I first got my RG350, my first device. And pre-orders for the RP2 were out at that point, and I passed on it because at the time I was like, I can't afford to buy more than one of these things, And so I ended up only buying the one. But man, that hype train kept going, right? And a lot of YouTube videos and stuff like that, people talking about it. And it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And so I ended up buying it. It was actually it was a two-part thing. Basically, I got the 350, and then I told my wife, I really like this thing. I'm thinking about making a website where I have guides for it because it was really hard to set up. And I was like, but if I make a website, I should probably have other devices. Is that cool? So I was like kind of fishing, right? And I'm like, hey, is it okay if I buy this one? And so I bought into the hype, and I said, okay, my second device is the Retroid Pocket 2. And so I was in the second wave of pre-orders. And a lot of work to set up, but it was a completely different setup than the RG350. And again, brand new coming into this whole sphere, and so I didn't realize like even that it was Android based. I didn't know any of that stuff, and so I had a lot of disappointment initially with that. I think that the work, if you put it in there, there's a lot you can get out of it, but that was definitely a deflating feeling, and it took me a while to kind of warm up to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly agree with you there. I was on that hype train. I made a subreddit for it just to pre-hype it, and when I got it, the initial experience without the touchscreen is just mind-shattering. Like, oh, this is not intuitive. This is not fun. Eventually, through custom firmware, I think we got there, or we're getting there. But I totally agree with you.
Yeah, the original mouse mode that was on the RP2 was it was a little rough, especially because there was a lot of user confusion about how to speed up and slow down the mouse, and it was literally just push left and right on the D-pad. But there wasn't really a good explanation for that anywhere.
Yeah, good point.
Agreed. Which you just answered the next question, by the way, which is from Zero. They asked, what's the most disappointing device you've reviewed or are currently reviewing? Do you have any disappointing devices you're currently reviewing?
Yeah, so I've got some that are just not going to see the light of day, you know. So I have
gossip.
There we go.
Some of them are old. You know, I have one, I don't even know what it's called. It's like a vertical one. It's called like the retro handheld.
Is it
something
the retro
or other
chicken? The retro chicken?
Retro chicken.
No, I kind of wish I had that one actually.
I kind of wish you did too.
Yeah. No, I got one. I forgot what it's called, but it has literally the Game Boy Micro screen inside of it. Like it uses the same screen. And it's pretty good for GBA, and everything else is just completely unplayable. You know, screen tearing, everything else is just terrible. You know, and so that I don't want to spend my time bashing something. You know, I try to do positive reviews. I'm trying to help the community grow and kind of get new people into it and stuff. It doesn't help anybody to bash something other than just to warn them against getting it. But again, this device is like $25. And nobody is probably shopping for it at this point, so I just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Other things that I have, so I actually have a, I'm going to get the chipset wrong, but I have an Android box that is like an RK3560 something or other. It's one of the more modern versions of the Rockchip CPUs or chipset. And it's an Android box, and you're supposed to be able to load things on it and stuff. But they loaded Android 11 on it, and it just cripples your ability to access files. Just
it's called storage.
And so I cannot actually get it to run like a Redream emulator or other emulators. You know what I mean? I just can't figure it out. And ETA Prime even did a video on it, and he just kind of blew it off. He was like, yeah, and I couldn't get Redream to work, so here it is on RetroArch, right? And I'm like, no, let's actually get this thing to work, right?
Yeah.
So that one's been really disappointing, and I've had it for almost 2 months at this point. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a video on it until I can actually get it working, because at the end of the day, I don't want to bash something, you know? And so I might do a cautionary video and be like, hey, this is what you can get out of it, but unfortunately it's not everything you may get out of it. But that's one that's not going to see the light of day, I don't think.
Which one is that? Turtle was wondering, were you talking about the RG99, the RS90, or which?
It's called, yeah, I've got it here in my hands. So it is the RK3566.
Okay.
It's called the X88 Pro 20.
I've not heard of that.
These naming conventions.
Yeah,
oh
it's touted
gosh.
as like a Android, like 8K Ultra HD box kind of thing.
What?
And it looks really good on paper, right?
Okay.
And I think I got it for about $100 on AliExpress. And it's and on paper, it looks like it should perform better than like the GT King Pro, basically. Which I think is a 3326 or whatever that chipset is. It looks like it performs better than that, at least on paper. But again, because I couldn't access all the file structure, it just didn't seem worth it to make a video about it.
I'll take a look into it a little bit later on after the AMA and see if maybe we can load up an Android 10 ROM on it, a GSI or something like that, and see how that goes.
Which was the vertical one you were talking about?
Hold on, let me get my shoebox out.
Ooh.
Got my Retroid Pocket 2 on it.
We're getting the Russ shoebox out. Which in Hawaii's humidity, I imagine that it probably isn't the best smell if it's had shoes in it over the years. Just to make things real weird.
Yeah.
I'm good at that.
You know what? It's not even in the shoebox. I'm not sure what it's called, but don't worry about it. It's $25 device.
Yeah, it's whatever. It's $25. Moving right along. Okay, we're having fun. We still have about 10 minutes left. Next question is going to come from Gould 2018. They ask, what's the best handheld you've reviewed for N64 emulation?
Good question. Man, so I spent a lot of time with the RK3326 devices, and there are moments where it just feels really great, but in general, they're not great. I don't want to cheat because I do have a GPD XD Plus, and it plays Nintendo 64 just fine, but I haven't done a video on it yet. I'm still kind of working on testing with that device. To be honest, I think the one I'm going to say, and people are probably going to disagree with me, Nintendo 64 and the PS Vita is actually really good now. Like I did like an original review of the Vita where I was like, here is the Vita as a handheld device. And I said, Nintendo 64 isn't even worth it, right? And then that day when I released the video, an updated version of Nintendo 64 emulator came out, and it's great.
Nice.
It's been, I released that I think 2 days before Christmas, so it's been good 6 months straight of people leaving comments to let me know that I'm totally wrong about Nintendo 64 on the PS Vita, and I agree with them. I just haven't gotten around to making a video. That's my next video actually on the PS Vita is going to be about Nintendo 64. But it plays really well. Yeah, the games that do play well, right? And there's some games that just won't boot at all. Like Mario Tennis, you can't even boot it, right? But like Mario 64, F-Zero, some of those play really well, and the screen it looks really, really good. Like it's that's probably one of my favorite things to play Nintendo 64 on, honestly.
Booyah. I like it. Next question comes from Capio13. They want to know, and this is very specific, I don't know if we'll be answering this, but is there a specific reason why modded games such as Pokemon Theta Emerald does not work on the Retroid OS for the Retroid Pocket 2? Is it something to do with an integer limit or a memory overflow? This sounds more like a question for
real technical.
For maybe mods or someone in our Discord. We'll go ahead and pass over that. I'll answer that one by saying, don't use Retroid OS. That's the reason. Just don't use it. Just don't do it. Just throw Lineage on there.
Load Lineage on.
And then I don't think you'll have issues. There's no integer limits or...
And I can add that the only exposure I have to Pokemon ROM hacks is when people specifically ask me, hey, I can't get this one working, and so then I'll spend 20 minutes getting it working and then telling them how it works. That's like my only exposure. And I don't remember any of those games, the names of any of them that I've tried, but I have gotten some working, but it's just not quite my scene. I'm a little too old for that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Just don't follow it, really. Okay, let's move on to Black Magician X. They want to know, do you think that Android handheld devices have any potential of becoming great cost-efficient gaming consoles in the future? Okay.
So you're talking about... so you're talking about being able to plug them into a TV, like as a gaming console? Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying just as a handheld?
I think that's what they mean here, is that, you're plugging it. It's an Android handheld device. Does it have potential of becoming a great cost-efficient full gaming console?
So I think that the Valhalla is a really good example of that, right? This whole dock that they're promoting and stuff. Yeah, I think it is possible. The great thing about Android is there's so many people in an ecosystem that a lot of times there's a solution out there. I watch a lot of times, I'm kind of a lurker in some of these Android Discord servers, like the 351 or 351 Droid one. And I watch the developers, including Thor, kind of work through this stuff. And it's so amazing to me when they sit there and go, oh, here's the solution. And they paste a link because somebody did it like 5 years ago,
Yeah.
And so I think that gives a lot of potential in that people don't have to create things from scratch. And when you have more people concentrated on a problem, even if it's not directly for that specific handheld, the fact that there's a solution out there on the interwebs is kind of cool, And so I do think, yes, that it is a viable option.
I will say, especially from personal experience, that the biggest gate on Android handhelds and things like that right now are the developers themselves not releasing kernel source and things like that, so we can load custom firmware on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Because
see that.
if you want to get the community involved and get people passionate, then release some source code for us so we can make your device better. You know.
Yeah, love it.
Russ, what's your? This is from Rebirth, RII Birth. What's your second favorite handheld? They know that you love the RG351P as your first, but what would be your second if the RG351P just stopped working and you need something to play?
So, my second favorite handheld is now the RG351P.
You just buy another one.
So no, I'm not even that. I'm saying that the RGB10 Max is now my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's so the 351P is now my second favorite handheld. So the RGB10 Max, I've fallen in love with that damn thing. Just the screen. Yeah, it's got lineage. It's got Retro Oz is beautiful. I've been planning on doing an ode to Retro Oz video at some point. The issue is that they host all their files on a Odroid server, like on a discussion forum.
Right.
And I want them to move over to GitHub so we can kind of just streamline the whole process for people to install and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's planning on it, and so I think once that happens, I'm just going to blow that wide open and be like, listen, this thing is super cool, So I do actually like that a lot better. It's just easing out of the 351P at this point. It just has a lot of things I love about it. After that, it's going to be the RGB10 non-max. That one is up there as well. Now, to be fair, though, I don't count the Vita in that kind of hierarchy, right? To me, the Vita is a separate console, and I love that as equally as any of these other handhelds. I really love that experience. I have 3 Vitas at this point. I've spent $600 on Vitas in the past year, which is ridiculous, but I love it. So,
well, good.
Do you have an upcoming video for the screen fix for the 10 Max?
That's part of the button swap. Yeah, it's in
there.
Okay,
right.
Yep.
That'll be good. Watch out for that. And Russ, you might have talked me into getting an orange creamsicle RGB10 Max now. I love my RGB10 Max, and I want a second one. So, yeah.
Well, you could always just, now on the Powkitty Shenzhen store, they actually sell the orange case as well as the white button. So if you wanted to just swap it all out and use your same PCB, it'd only be $35.
Well, there you go. Maybe I'll do that. I'll just pick whatever shell I want for the week and be like, okay, this is my shell. Yeah. I'm a creamsicle week, or I'm going to be a dark week. So moving on to...
You can swap those SDs around at any time, man.
Except I don't dare open these consoles anymore. I keep snapping things and breaking things. I just mail them to Thor. I have a Grape RP2 I'm mailing to Thor tomorrow because I'm not going to open it. So I'm scared and I'm terrible at electronics and my hands are huge. So Sussy Sappy Snappy. Sussy Sappy Nappy. Can't say that 10 times fast. Sussy Sappy Nappy wants to know, with PlayStation emulators on these handhelds, what is the craziest glitch you've ever run into, and what game was it on, if you can remember?
I don't think I've ever experienced a crazy glitch, to be honest.
Yeah.
I know that there are certain games like Suikoden, and I'm saying that wrong, but Suikoden, whatever that game is too. I know that has glitches at certain parts in the game. I will never get far enough in that game to actually get that far, So
yeah.
I'm not really sure. I don't think I've ever actually experienced weird glitches. I will say that often, I in the very beginning of things, I used to be really dumb, and I would grab my ROMs from the ones that were preloaded on SD cards. I'm like, oh, they got Mario World. I'll just grab it from that one. Put it on my device, right? But they've got a Mario World jumps and stuff, and it took me forever to figure out that was happening. And I was like, what is so weird about this game, And so I think glitchy games like that, which I think are just ROM hacks that they're loading up on the Chinese side. But I haven't actually experienced any on the PS1 that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely run into some issues on PS1 emulators. DuckStation is not ready for prime time yet, in my experience. I keep wanting to use it because it's 64-bit, but it just glitches out on half the games I throw at it. So I'm still doing the PCX rearmed core.
Yeah,
it's just tried and true.
I always expect glitches within 64 when testing.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Especially texture stuff.
Yeah, Paper Mario is just always weird looking.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So that was their question. Thank you guys so much for these questions, by the way. You guys have really come up with some good ones for us here. So we're almost out of time, but a couple left. So Mud Maniac wants to know, they're curious how to hack their Vita. It's been 100% virgin original Vita with all the things they bought from the store. Do you think it's still worth hacking if they're happy with it, I suppose, as is?
Yeah, so it really depends on how much content you already have on it, right? Like, if you've already got it loaded with all your stuff, then go for it. The thing is, there's a new version of hacking or new method for hacking called Vita deploy, and it's been out for a few months now, and it's really good. And I have not done a video on it yet. I have the old method on my YouTube channel, but I haven't done the new one. And I recently bought a new, like my third.
Oh, we lost Russ
at the same time.
There you're back now.
Oh, okay. So I was saying that I have a white PS Vita now, and I plan on using Vita deploy on that, and I'll make a video of that. And I would say maybe hold off, because there are people who have found issues with the old method, things like the device still trying to connect to update and things like that. And there are fixes to it, but it is kind of a pain. So maybe wait a month and give me time to make the new one. If you waited this long, you've had it since 2012 or whatever, what's another month, right? And so you wait for the Vita deploy, or just Google that and do the written instruction, which is also really good. I think it's worth it. I love the ability to just not have to swap out cards or anything else like that, and to use an SD card with my device. I really love that part.
I got to do that for my Vita too. I got to decide if I want to hack it. I think it's worth the time. So moving on to our last two questions. Capio13 again. This time they want to know: have you had your eye on any OG Xbox emulators that work well or seem promising at all? Have you heard of anything like that, Russ?
I haven't, to be honest. Yeah, I think that takes a lot more horsepower. I mean, I don't even have them loaded on my PC because it just seems like a little bit much. To be honest, there's not a ton of Xbox games that I really want to play. Like, I don't know, I can stream Master Chief Collection and play Halo 1 and 2 like on my device through streaming. And so maybe Jade Empire, I'd love to play that again, but yeah, there's not a ton in that library that it really excites me, unfortunately.
And through Xbox's backwards compatibility, you can kind of play all those old games on your newer gen console. Yeah,
I think Indigo Prophecy still works on my Xbox One. That was one of my favorite OG Xbox games. Like,
hell yeah. Yeah, that's a good game.
Yeah, it's super good.
Last question of the night. Sussy Sappy Nappy again. What is your favorite ROM hack?
Oh man, I haven't played any ROM hacks. I did the D-pad hacks for like the Spirit Tracks and the other Zelda game, Phantom Hourglass. I did like a D-pad hack for those. I haven't done anything else really, I just haven't gotten into that world. I always think, well, when I get time, I'm going to sit down and kind of do that stuff. But I just never have, unfortunately. So, yeah.
And in the last Hail Mary moment, Opus wants to know, wondering how many videos have you had Nintendo claim for showing Nintendo gameplay? A legal question for you.
Yeah, good. 0. So I've had 0 copyright strikes, none of that stuff. And I think a lot of it is because I talk over when I'm playing, and so it doesn't hit like the whatever bots they're using to scrape the content and stuff like that. It never gets hit, and because I'm always talking over the games and stuff. A lot of people will mute the game audio and stuff like that. I don't do any of that stuff. I make it pretty quiet just to make sure there's no conflict in the audio and stuff.
Yep.
But when it comes down to it, I've had 0 strikes, and I'm pretty proud of that. So it's pretty cool.
And you want to keep it that way.
Yes, please. I mean, I've gotten hacked a couple times, but no strikes.
Yay! Let's keep it that way. Well, thank you, Russ, so much for being on with us tonight. This was a lot of fun. We should do more of these, man.
We should.
I like this.
Yeah, this is super fun. I loved it.
And for anyone there who hasn't seen Russ's videos, find him on YouTube. Just look up Retro Gamecore, all one word, RetroGamecorps. It's at the top of this live stream channel if you want to find it. We have had Russ on now this is our 3rd time, and we love having him on, and we hope to do many more together. So, Thor, do you have any parting words?
Just want to throw that out there. Thank you, everybody, for joining in with us. Russ, thank you so much for being here, bud. I had a really good time. I hope you did too. And make sure to join the channel or join the server if you haven't already, if you're just hitting up links. And yeah, of course, check out Retro Gamecore.
And
thanks, guys. Yeah, I had a ton of fun. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Anytime. Let's do a billion more. And if you guys like podcasts, we also will be uploading this to our regular podcast, which is brbgaming.simplecast.com. So that's where you're going to find this recording in a couple of days, as well as all of our previous episodes and more stuff with Russ. So thank you again, and we will sign off for the night. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.